Hey, here we are on a Sunday at school with Roxy. Yeah, we are. And we are celebrating fourth grade writing, aren't we, Roxy? Yeah, we are. And you know, good writing doesn't just happen by accident. The students have been writing like 3 essays a week. And each time we're learning rigorous things and we celebrate their work by putting it on the screen. And it's been an evolution of growth, pretty darn cool too. So we hope you take the time to just see how awesome they are doing. So here we go. Skill that they will always use, and one of the things we've learned to do this year is to have a hook. A hook makes the reader want to read what's written. Hooks come in many fashions. One is background. Background's everything you can see and hear and smell and taste and touch, and it gives the reader a picture, makes the reader want to read it. The other hook that we can do, we've learned so far, is to have a question. A question is like the main idea, but it's in the form of a question. It ignites the reader. It makes the reader want to read it. And then, of course, we work a lot on evidence. In the state test, they really want you to use evidence from the reading. And so this essay that we're looking at today happens to be from practice for the state test. And they were reading 2 articles. Yeah, 2. One was on the food drive for dogs and what a school did to take that project on. The other article was about building a sanctuary of native plants for birds. And so they were choosing which do they think was better. So it was an opinion piece they were writing. And so we've been starting out with a background hook, which just gives the reader a picture and makes the reader want to read it. These first essays got a score of 15 out of 10, which means, oh my gosh, they've listened and applied to everything that we have learned this year. This first one happens to be Zach T. Listen to this. Gloomy whimpering comes from the rusty old dry cages. Walking into the cold, unthinkable animal shelter, then you want to adopt one for your school pet drive project. And now he's switching to the other essay. On the other hand, a dark bird dashes heading to a marvelous garden. You wonder if there's a way you can help the bird. Wow. And so we've also worked a lot on using classy adjectives and adverbs to the nouns and the verbs. And so you can see that heading through in that one. Here comes his hook questions. Have you ever had a pet food drive? Have you ever had a garden? If you had to pick between a pet food drive or a garden for the bird, which would you pick? And then comes his evidence with evidence right from the reading. Yahoo! So the first one was about the dogs, and then it's about the birds. And he ends, so in my conclusion, I would say that the pet food drive would be good for the project, and he gives us reasons why. Way to go, Zach. Another one who got 15 out of 10 was Connor. His goes like this: bark, bark, bark. The cold, sad dogs start to bark at the curious, joyful people that come to them at the unpleasant animal shelter. Whoa, here's adjectives. A happy family goes to see some dogs to adopt them. On the other side of the world, chirp, 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 the joyful bird starts to chirp for food and water in someone's stupendous backyard. A few seconds later, food and water start spewing from the cold bird bath and the warm feeding bowl. And then comes his hook questions. Do you know what dogs go through? Do you know what birds go through? Do you know what a pet food drive is? Do you know what a school did for the birds? Woo, good questions that just hammer at the main idea. And then comes, of course, all of his evidence, detailed evidence from the passage about what it takes to do a food drive. And then he tells about the birds, same thing. And then ends with what school project you think is better, and a number of questions, and he tells why he wants the bird project instead, and ends with they built a peaceful garden for the birds so they don't have to hunt for it. So which one do you like? Wow, bravo, beautiful, Connor. And taking in a score of 15 out of 10. Oh my gosh, Joseph has come so far. Yahoo to Joseph. He starts this out, bark, bark, the poor and desperate pup shivering in a dreadful cage. But then, ... Can we adopt a dog? Said one generous and considerate boy. But on the other hand, the bees squeaked and chirped. The poor butterflies, birds, and bees were seeking mouth-watering food in the enjoyable and pleasant backyard. Do you know what is better, the food drive or the school-built a garden of native plants? And then he tells all about the food drive using words like the colossal dog shelter requires 24 pounds of delicious dog food every day for every dog each year. Goes on and on. And then he tells about the garden. Joseph, this is amazing. And then he tells at the end which one he would like with a lot of elaboration of evidence. So, man, way to go, Joseph. Oh my gosh, listen to this. Woof, woof. As the hungry, big German Shepherd was jumping up and down in his gigantic crate, the owner of the loud animal shelter gave him a cup of delicious dry dog food. Munch, munch, bark. The full dog was delighted. Look how she transitions into the other article. Listen to this. Wow. But in another neighborhood, there were colorful educational posters to help make a beautiful garden. A bunch of loud kids were planting in the fresh garden. Yay, said the kids. They were making beautiful fresh plants for the awesome environment. And then comes her beautiful hook questions. Do you know what a pet food drive is? Do you own a pet? Do you like birds? Do you have a garden? Beautiful. And then following that, of course, is her beautiful evidence that comes from the reading and ends with this at her conclusion at the end. Which one is more helpful in your opinion? And she tells about the dog food drive being her favorite one. What about the other? It's good, but animals need a lot of help. Yahoo, Layla. 15 out of 10 is Rosaline. Listen to this. The sun was shining ever so bright in the large city. But besides the people talking, there was another sound. Whining and barking inside the shelter. Hopeful dogs were wishing to get picked, and some wished they had more dry, delicious food. See how she's leading into, with her background, what this whole thing is about, the food drive for dogs. But, look at this good transition. But a few blocks down, there was a school with a really pretty garden. But those plants weren't just any, they were native. And with all those plants, birds were crowding those plants. But keep looking closer, you'll see insects taking small bites. Wow, what a brilliant beginning background paragraph. Here comes her hook questions. Have you ever set a food drive? Have you ever set a plant food drive? Or how about pet food drive? And then, of course, following that is all of her evidence. And at the end, after her conclusion paragraph, she says, but that's my opinion. Which of the following would you have? Just beautiful, Rosaline. I didn't write like this in 4th grade. Ruff, a fluffy, soft, small dog was excited to be welcomed into a beautiful, clean house after waiting in the cold shelter with no friends. He had his first meal in peace after a long time. And he continues on and then transitions to, in a school not too far away, science teacher Jody West and some students were teaching her students about the environment in their garden with leaves that would shine brighter than the sun. Whoa, did you hear that sentence? Then comes his beautiful questions. What would you prefer? A big garden which can provide life-saving food and nutrients to the starved soil and some small insects and hungry small birds? Or would you want to do pet food drives and send healthy food and other things to a shelter? Notice how the hook questions just totally hammer the main idea, but they do it in a way that makes the reader want to read it. And then, what's a pet food drive? And there goes his evidence. What do you mean by a big garden? And there goes the evidence for the garden. And then he ends with, what operation do you think is better? Is the pet food drive or the school garden project? And he goes on to tell why he chose that. Oh my gosh, Jed, doesn't get better than that. Here's another winning one by Sebastian. The tiny dog is weeping and yapping for food and someone to look after. And then out of nowhere, there are children's parents and educators on the surface of the school, feeding the pets before bringing them to people who want them. The small dog eventually rushed to them. They saw the dog and put it in the box and fed it before they gave the dog to someone. After eating, it found a family for it. While at the other school, volunteers were making an enormous garden with the native plants for hungry birds, bees, and butterflies to eat. It took a lot of hard work. They worked to make the birds safe and happy. All at once, everyone in the local birds and what they need. That's how the birds are safe. And then comes the hook questions. Have you ever seen the pet food drive that helps poor dogs and cats? Do you know the garden of native plants that helps birds and insects eat? Which would you prefer? See, he nailed the whole main idea in those 3 questions. Just beautiful. And Sebastian is the king of evidence. When he reads, he takes notes. And so look at all of his gorgeous, beautiful evidence. Yahoo Sebastian ends it with, which one do you think is more important? And then his elaboration on that. Yahoo Sebastian. And Cadence did another winning essay. I liked how she put a title. Who should we help? The dogs and the cats or the birds? She starts out with, woof, woof, cries the small and hungry pup. The poor thing is locked in a small, dirty, rusty, cold, metal, wet cage with a bone-dry water bowl. Wow. A little girl comes in and sees this poor thing. She writes down the address and shelter name and phone number. She gives it some water and food. Clink, clink goes the food as it falls. Splash, splash goes the water. She felt like she was freezing alive. She goes home and tells her mom, and on the way, look how she transitions into the other article. She sees a bird who needs a shelter. It's in poor condition, so she gives it some water and seed. It has many scratches from trying to eat thorns and bad food with poison, and with a few minutes, it quickly and happily flies away in search of more food. The little girl explains to her mom, and they get started on finding out what to do. Wow, beautiful lead into what this is about. So then comes our 2 hook questions. Imagine your school is about to have a community project, and you were the little girl in the story, but you could only choose one. Which one would you choose? The poor dog or the sad bird? And then goes her beautiful paragraphs of evidence and ends with her awesome conclusion. Beautiful. And I liked how at the end she says, what would you do? Why would you do that? Did your answer from the beginning change at the end? Sweet. Cadence. Here is Jordan's. Ring, ring. The loud kids excited the happy, curious class. They saw large posters all over the white walls. As the kids were looking at the poster, the pet food drive was sending food to the shelter. Do you know what happened on the other side? That's his transition to the next article. Soon, the fast blackbird was flying to the healthy green garden to eat. As the bird was eating the tasty plants, it flew to the bubbly fountain for water. Here comes this hook questions. Have you ever adopted a dog? Have you ever had a pet food drive at your school? Have you ever seen a bird eat your plants in your garden? Which one would you have at your school? Pet drive or garden? Wow, beautiful hook questions. And then he has amazing evidence and ends with, which one do you think is better for the school, the pet food drive or the garden? And then in his conclusion, he tells why and ends with the awesome question, which do you think is more important? Bravo, Jordan. The sorrow dog. The dog is chasing me. I had to run to the next neighborhood. Oh, is that a bird? It landed in a fountain. Oh, is it a school? Bye, bird. It's a beautiful hearing. Yeah, the students made it for real. Yeah, they made it for the birds. That was cool. Kind of conversational. Neat, Zach. Do you want a pet? Do you have an exotic or normal animal? Have you ever made something for a pet? And then he goes on with all of his evidence. Which project do you think is better? He has at the end, the food drive or the place for birds? And he tells why. Yahoo! Zach. Well, we can't leave out Kyle. Her title is, which one should we have? The pet food drive or a native garden habitat? I love it when they start with a title which hammers at the main idea like she did. Swoosh, bonk, the hurtful parakeet flung on the ground. The days passed and the shivering parakeet was seated like it was frozen. But a saving little girl stepped by and saw it was on the ground and slightly picked up the shivering, crying parakeet. After that, the daring girl nicely made a native garden for the shivering parakeet. On the other side of the world, an alarmed border collie shivered out in the crispy, cold night. In the day, an amiable boy was seeking for his ball and then suddenly saw the shivering border collie. He rushed to his mom and said, "We need to take the shivering border collie to a pet food drive." The amiable boy and the seeking mom raced to the pet food drive. They gave the dog food, water, and shelter. The days passed, and the sheltered dog was well. After that day, an amiable little girl adopted the sheltered dog. Here comes her hook questions. Do you know any kind of pet food drive? Do you have native plants? Would you rather have a food drive, pet food drive, or a garden of native plants? And then there's her splendid evidence, and ends with her conclusion. You really want to elaborate the conclusion because that's the whole question of the thing. Which one would you do and why? So, awesome, Kyle. So one of the most exciting things is just to see growth. Warren, this is yours. Oh my gosh, what a change you've made. It's beautiful. Kids were excited. They saw posters all over the walls. As the kids were looking at the poster, the pet food drive was sending food to the shelter. But you know what happened on the other side? Soon, the blackbird was flying to the healthy green garden to eat, and the bird was eating the tasty plants. As the bird was eating the tasty plants, it flew to the fountain for water. Here comes his good questions. You ever had a project in your class like a pet food drive or made a garden? And then he has evidence about each one. Oh my gosh, look at all you wrote. And just beautiful organization. Warren, wow. Ends with, I think the pet food drive is more important, and he tells all the reasons why. Ends with the beautiful question, what do you think is more important? Bravo, Warren. Kimber joined our school later in the year, and she has made such tremendous progress. This is so exciting, Kimber. One day my mom said, go to the animal shelter and bring the food that we have for the dogs and the cats to the shelter so they can eat. But on the other side of town was a school, and they were building a garden for birds and native plants. There was a bubbly water fountain for the birds, but when I arrived at the animal shelter, they had no food in their silver bowls or water either. And here comes her good questions. Have you ever been to an animal shelter? Have you ever planted plants or helped birds? Have you ever had a pet? And then goes all of her evidence and her conclusion. And she likes dogs better. Oh, Kimber, you made my day. And here is Santiago. Wow, Santiago, look what you are doing now. Peep, peep, birds are flying to the plants. That's in Washington Elementary School in Pasadena. On the other side of the earth, sounds of dogs crying and whining are in the shelter. Do you like dogs and cats? Or have you ever had a pet food drive? And then he tells about each one and wrote so much. Oh my gosh, Santiago, amazing. Matthew, oh, look at you. Is this yours? Yes, it is. Ruff, ruff, as the impatient, hungry dog whines for food. On the other hand, there was a thirsty bird that went in and ate some food from the bird feeder. Then when it was done, the bird went to the shiny, clean water. What would you pick, birds or dogs to take care of? And then he says, have you ever had a school project you had to pick what you wanted to do? What would you pick as pets? Or pick as pets or help birds live? There goes his evidence. His conclusion at the end. Oh my gosh, Matthew, this is so awesome. Ian, what a journey you've had. Look at this. Imagine your school is having a project. Should it be for a pet food drive or natural plants? To make the pressure real, it's all on you. You're shivering. Half is waiting for a pet food drive. Then your friend says, pick pet food drive because it can help the dogs and the cats. On the other side is natural plants, and then you see a bird. You say, let's help the birds. And And then the teacher asks why. You say, maybe they're hungry or need water. And there comes his hook questions. Have you ever had a project in your class? Have you ever helped a dog in a shelter? Have you ever made a garden? Oh, Damien. Oh my gosh, this is so awesome. And then he ends with his conclusion. Hats off to you, Damien. Wine. A cold white dog in an animal shelter whines for food. And then a class comes in and feeds all the dogs and cats. And then students feed the cold white dog. Then he tells us evidence about the pet food drive and then the birds. Look at this, Adrian. And then comes his hook questions. What project do you think is better? Has your school hosted a pet food drive? Have you seen a bird eating or drinking? Have you ever adopted a cat? And then he does his very own conclusion at the end. This is just stunning, Adrian. Wow, bravo. So is this the boy that didn't like to write? Eli, oh my gosh, look at this. Do you like the abrupt smell of flowers? Do you ever wonder how birds survive with a very rare chance of food and water? Do you know how dogs and cats survive with little food and shelters? And then it was winter. Animals were shivering. Bones were frigid and it was hard to move. Animals were starving in the shelter. And just beautiful evidence, powerful words. Wow, Eli, way to go, you Yahoo. And here is Dalians. Wow, he has come so far. It was a freezing cold day and the poor dog was desperately wailing for someone willing to adopt him. As he waited, he heard a loud noise lock and the cage door unlocked and he jumped for joy. He was delighted to be free. Do you like animals? Do you like birds? Do you like dogs? How would you feel if you were one of these animals? Which one do you like better, the dog project or the bird project? And then he goes on with his great evidence and his conclusion. And he thinks the dog project would be better. Wow. Dalian, this is awesome. Here is Elias. You're driving to a pet shelter and you see all these poor animals. They're hungry, weak dogs. You see silver bowls that are empty like a plate with nothing on it. The dogs were whining with hunger because they were stuck in an old plain cage that was musty and lonely. You come in and you see your favorite animals. You get the dog and you buy it and let's see. And then she goes on later with, but on the other hand, there are birds dashing away to the dazzling garden. The next day you go to school and see the pet food drive. But they had a contest and asked, what should we do? Build native plants garden or a pet drive? I question, what are the native plant gardens like? And then she tells about that, and then she tells about the pet food drive, and ends with a great conclusion. Wow, a lot of writing. Way to go, Aaliyah.